3 grown men tried to humiliate my son over a fish, and the whole neighborhood gathered like it was Sunday's freak show. They thought they were in control, stomping on his pride like it was nothing. But the second I stepped onto that dock, everything shifted. And trust me, what happened next was nothing they were ready for. Mike was 42, a man who looked like he had been carved out of sarcasm and nicotine stains. And he lived by a lake that was pretty enough to make postcards, but cursed enough to be patrolled by the HOA, those self-appointed neighborhood warlords with clipboards and delusions of grandeur. His son Jason was 15, tall for his age, with hair that never listened to a comb and the permanent expression of a kid forced to sit through a church sermon. The kid only wanted one thing that morning: to sit on the dock, toss a line into the water, and pretend the world was not one giant pain in the ass. The morning was still, fog curling off the lake like smoke from a cheap cigarette. Jason sat cross-legged with his rod balanced, staring at the bobber with the kind of focus his teachers always prayed for but never got. He had caught one fish already, a decent little bass flopping in the bucket beside him. He grinned like he had just beaten life's tutorial level. Then came the voices, shrill, nasal, the kind of tones that could sandpaper your soul. 3 men in matching black shirts with HOA security plastered across their chests strutted down the dock like they were Navy SEALs, except Navy SEALs did not waddle under the weight of beer guts and child support payments. "Hey, you, kid," one of them barked, pointing at Jason like he had just caught him shoplifting. "Fishing without authorization, that is a violation." Jason blinked at them, rod still in his hands. His voice cracked slightly when he answered, "Dude, what the fuck? It's a lake. Fish do not care about your rules." The leader, a red-faced slab of meat with sweat soaking through his shirt, puffed out his chest. "Do not talk back. You are trespassing under HOA Regulation 14B, Jason snorted. "Regulation 14 kiss my ass, maybe. My dad said this lake is public." By then, a couple of neighbors had started wandering out of their backyards. The suburbs were always hungry for free entertainment, and the sight of 3 fake cops trying to flex on a teenager was like blood in the water. People leaned on fences, sipping cheap beer at 9 in the morning, waiting for someone to get humiliated. The second guard, a bald guy with eyes so dead he could have been a fish himself, smirked and pulled out his phone. "Smile for the camera, little outlaw. Gonna show everyone what happens when you disrespect the rules." Jason felt his stomach twist. The phone's red recording light blinked like a target on his forehead. His hands tightened on the fishing rod, knuckles white. The bucket rattled as the base inside flopped against the metal like even the fish was panicking. "Come on, say it," the bald guy sneered. "Say you broke the rule." "Admit you're guilty." Jason's lips trembled, but he lifted his chin. "I am guilty of catching dinner while you losers catch heart disease." The crowd burst into laughter. Ugly, sharp laughter, the kind that made Jason's chest burn. One of the guards stepped forward and kicked the bucket over. The fish hit the dock and flailed helplessly. Before Jason could react, the bald one stomped down hard, crushing it into a wet smear. The sound made Jason's throat tighten. Something inside him cracked. The fragile confidence of a kid who just wanted to be left alone. His eyes watered, though he refused to cry in front of them, and that was when Mike appeared. He had been watching from the porch, coffee mug in hand, eyes narrowing as the 3 wannabe cops circled his son like vultures. He moved down the dock with the slow, steady gait of someone who knew every board under his boots. His voice carried low and sharp. "Really? 3 grown men picking on a 15-year-old with a fishing rod? That is what gets you hard in the morning?" The guards froze. Neighbors hushed. Mike's shadow stretched across the dock, and even Jason, still clutching the broken rod, felt the air shift. Mike stopped beside his son, towering over the fake cops, his grin razor thin. "Tell me, which one of you geniuses thought bullying a kid was community service? Because honestly, dude, what the fuck?" The crowd chuckled nervously, the kind of laugh people make when they know the punchline might end in blood. Jason looked up at his father, eyes wide with a cocktail of relief and disbelief. For the first time that morning, he realized the show was not over. It had just started. The dock felt like a stage, and Mike had just walked into the spotlight. Jason stood behind him, fists clenched around the splintered half of his broken fishing rod, while the 3 self-declared security officers tried to decide if they should double down or crawl back into whatever basement had spawned them. The leader, the red-faced slab of lard, sneered with a kind of false confidence only cheap beer and midlife failure could produce. He shook out his plastic handcuffs like he was about to make a citizen's arrest. "Step aside, sir. Your son violated the rules, and we are authorized to enforce them." Mike laughed, the kind of laugh that wasn't really laughter, but more like a warning growl. "Authorized?" Dude, the only thing you're authorized to do is scare squirrels and cry when your ex-wife blocks you on social media. Put those Fisher-Price handcuffs away before you embarrass yourself further. The bald guard with the fish eyes puffed his chest. This is serious. The community depends on order. If every punk kid fished wherever they wanted, there would be chaos. Jason muttered under his breath. Yeah, God forbid we run out of bass in your kingdom, King Chrome Dome. The crowd chuckled, but the third guy, the quiet one with the phone, kept recording, zooming in on Jason like he was filming an interrogation. The blinking red dot on the screen burned into Jason's nerves. His cheeks flamed with humiliation. He wanted to shove the phone straight into the lake, watch it sink like a stone. Mike stepped closer to the trio, his boots thudding on the wooden boards. His voice was calm, but it had that razor edge that made grown men rethink their life choices. Let me explain how this is going to work. You three will apologize to my son. You'll stop waving your fake cop toys around, and then you'll walk your asses off this dock before I lose the last molecule of patience I have left. The red-faced leader scoffed. Or what? Mike tilted his head, almost amused. Or I'll show you exactly what happens when you pick on my family. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end with you feeling proud of yourselves. The crowd oohed like kids in a cafeteria fight. Phones went up, lenses catching every second. Suburban drama was better than Netflix, and this one had front row seats. Jason felt a sick twist in his stomach. He hated the way everyone stared, hated being the punchline in some cheap HOA circus. But at the same time, a surge of pride swelled in his chest watching his dad stand there, unshaken, dismantling these wannabe cops with words sharper than knives. The bald one stepped closer, face inches from Mike's. You cannot threaten us. We are the authority here. Mike's lips curled into a smirk. Authority? Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not even real cops. You're three clowns in matching shirts who probably got rejected from mall security. If authority means stomping on a kid's fish and trying to handcuff him with dollar store plastic, then congratulations, you're kings of the losers. The bald man's jaw clenched, and with a snap decision, he lunged at Jason. Mike's hand shot out faster than the eye could track. He grabbed the man's wrist mid-swing, twisted it until the bald guy squealed like a kicked pig. The phone guy lowered his camera just a second, startled. The crowd gasped. Touch my son again, Mike said, voice low and deadly, and I'll make sure you regret it every time you try to open a door for the rest of your miserable life. The bald man staggered back, clutching his hand, glaring with watery eyes. Jason exhaled shakily, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. For a split second, he saw his dad not just as the sarcastic, grumpy guy who yelled about chores, but as something else, something terrifying and invincible. The red-faced leader took a step forward, voice cracking despite his attempt at bravado. You're interfering with official duties. That is assault. Mike smirked wider. Assault? No, buddy, that was a lesson. And trust me, I've got a full curriculum if you want extra credit. The neighbors howled with laughter. Some clapped, others whistled. Phones zoomed in closer, catching sweat dripping down the wannabe cops' faces. The humiliation was real, tangible, spreading like wildfire. Jason straightened, still clutching the broken rod. His voice carried across the dock. Yeah, maybe you should go enforce rules somewhere else. Like your own pathetic lives. The crowd erupted again. The quiet guard with the phone finally spoke, muttering under his breath. This is not over. But even his tone lacked conviction. Mike leaned forward, eyes locked on the trio. Oh, it's over. Right now. Unless you'd like me to turn this little HOA power trip into something a lot more permanent. The dock was silent except for the water lapping against the posts. The guards froze, caught between retreat and humiliation, while Jason stood behind his father, chest heaving, adrenaline sizzling like electricity in his veins. The stage was set, and the tension was a noose tightening around every throat on that dock. The dock was buzzing like a cheap electric wire ready to snap. Neighbors leaned forward as if they were watching the finals of a boxing match. Except instead of gloves, there were plastic handcuffs, a broken fishing rod, and one dad radiating enough do-not-fuck-with-me energy to power the whole town. Jason stood behind Mike, his chest rising and falling too fast, clutching the splintered rod like it was a sword from some post-apocalyptic video game. The kid's lips were pressed together so tight they looked like they were stapled shut, but his eyes screamed every curse word he was too proud to let spill. The red-faced HOA boss decided to crank his stupidity up to 11. He puffed up his gut, stepped forward and barked, "This community thrives on discipline. You cannot disrespect the rules and get away with it." Mike tilted his head, eyes narrowed with the kind of grin that said, I am about 2 sentences away from ending your entire existence. His voice came out slow, cutting through the air. Discipline? Dude, what the fuck? You cannot even discipline your belt into staying on your waist." The crowd cracked up, laughter exploding down the shoreline. Someone dropped a beer can into the grass. Jason's lips twitched, half pride, half terror. But damn, hearing his dad roast this guy in front of the whole neighborhood was the sweetest revenge he could imagine. The bald guard, still nursing his twisted wrist, spat toward the water. "You think this is funny? We are here to protect order. Without us, this place would fall apart," Jason finally snapped. His voice cracked, but the words hit sharp. "Fall apart? Bro, the only thing falling apart is your hairline and your marriage." "Order my ass! You stomped my fish for fun!" The dock echoed with "ooh" like a schoolyard brawl. The phone guy zoomed in even closer, the red record light flashing like a warning siren. Jason wanted to punch that glowing dot out of existence, but the presence of his dad kept him steady. Mike leaned forward just enough that the red-faced leader flinched. "Protecting order? You clowns could not protect a sandwich in a lunchroom. You came here to flex on a kid, and now you are shaking like chihuahuas in a thunderstorm." The neighbors were feeding on the spectacle, their laughter twisted with nervousness. Everyone loved seeing the HOA humiliated, but no one knew where this train was heading. The red-faced man tried again, his voice desperate. "Step aside or we will have to escalate," Mike chuckled, shaking his head slowly. "Escalate? Dude, this is already escalated. This is escalated, microwaved, and served on a plate of pure embarrassment." Jason coughed out a laugh he could not hold back. His knuckles were still white on the broken rod, but for the first time all morning, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he was not the victim here. The bald one stepped forward again, jaw clenched, as if the humiliation had shredded the last piece of common sense he had. He hissed, "You cannot talk to us like that. We are in charge." Mike spread his arms, grinning wider. "In charge of what? Lawn height, trash bins? Dude, even the ducks laugh at you. You want to be in charge? Try telling gravity to stop pulling on your stomach." The crowd erupted. Even the phone guy snorted before trying to hide it. Jason whispered under his breath, loud enough for the front row of neighbors to hear, "Damn, Dad's roasting them harder than the sun burns my shoulders." The laughter rolled again, but under the noise a sharp tension brewed. The HOA clowns were losing their grip, their authority crumbling like a cheap deck chair under a heavyweight. The red-faced man's voice shook as he yelled, "This disrespect ends now." He swung his arm up, plastic cuffs flashing in the sunlight like the saddest badge of honor, but Mike did not flinch. He stepped closer until the man's hand froze midair. His voice dropped, deadly quiet, each word like a nail hammered into the silence. "Touch my son with those toy bracelets, and you will regret waking up this morning. Try me." The air turned razor sharp. The crowd hushed, phones held higher, faces pale but hungry for the clash. Jason's heart thundered, blood roaring in his ears. He felt the dock shake under his sneakers, or maybe it was just his knees trembling. And there they stood. 3 fake cops stripped of confidence, one father brimming with controlled fury, and a son staring at his dad like he had just watched him transform into some unholy mix of comedian, executioner, and savior. The dock was no longer just wood and nails. It was a battlefield. The dock was creaking like it knew a fight was about to happen. Jason stood behind his dad, heart hammering, still clutching his broken fishing rod like some tragic prop in the world's worst play. The 3 HOA wannabes had painted themselves into a corner, and now they were just too stupid or too proud to shut up and leave. The red-faced leader, sweat dripping down his temple, tried to hold his ground. His jowls shook as he spat out words. "You're obstructing community law enforcement. That's an offense." Mike barked a laugh so sharp it sliced the tension in half. "Community law enforcement? Dude, what the fuck? You sound like a failed Power Ranger. The only thing you enforce is secondhand embarrassment." The crowd howled. Neighbors clapped, some whistled, and even the ducks in the lake flapped off like they did not want to be associated with this circus. Jason's lips twitched, despite the knot of humiliation still rotting in his stomach. For a second, it felt like his dad's sarcasm was punching harder than fists ever could. The bald guard, still massaging his twisted wrist, tried to recover. His voice cracked as he shouted, "We keep this neighborhood safe." Jason muttered just loud enough. "Safe from what? Base with bad attitudes?" The crowd exploded again. Someone in the back yelled, "Roast him, kid!" And Jason felt a flicker of pride. The quiet one with the phone zoomed in closer, his shaky hands betraying nerves. The red record dot blinked like a countdown timer. Every second he filmed, the humiliation turned into permanent evidence, and Mike knew it. He took a step closer, letting the wood groan under his boots. His voice dropped into that tone fathers use when they're about to end an argument forever. "You stomped my kid's fish, broke his rod, Tried to slap plastic bracelets on him like you were auditioning for kindergarten cop. And now you want to pretend you're heroes? No, you're bullies in matching t-shirts. That's all. The red-faced guy's ears burned crimson, and with a wild swing, he jabbed his plastic cuffs forward like they were brass knuckles. Pathetic. Mike barely moved. His hand snapped up, caught the man's wrist midair, and twisted. The sound was a wet pop, and the man yelped like a kicked dog. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones zoomed in closer. Someone shouted, "Holy shit, he just broke him!" Jason's eyes went wide. His dad stood like a statue, arm locked, voice dripping with venom. "You want to arrest someone? Start with yourself for being born this stupid." The man stumbled back, clutching his wrist, face pale and eyes watering. The bald guard swore and lunged forward, fury written all over his shiny scalp. But Mike pivoted fast, shoulders rolling like he had done this 1,000 times. He slammed his boot forward, not enough to break bone, but enough to send the bald guy staggering back, nearly tripping into the lake. The crowd erupted, half horrified, half thrilled. Jason's pulse surged. The whole dock felt electric, like static before a lightning strike. For the first time, he was not just the kid who got shamed. He was standing in the center of something raw, messy, and terrifying. The bald guard wheezed, clutching his chest. "You'll pay for this." Mike leaned in, his smirk razor sharp. "Pay? Buddy, I already paid. Taxes, HOA fees, and now the emotional damage of hearing your voice. I'm bankrupt." The crowd roared. Someone shouted, "He's killing them with words!" And Jason laughed despite himself, a short, shocked bark of laughter that felt more like freedom than mockery. The phone guard finally lowered his camera, stepping back like he wasn't sure if filming this chaos made him a witness or an accessory. His eyes darted nervously, sweat dripping down his forehead. Jason noticed. For the first time, the quiet one looked scared, really scared. And in that flicker of fear, Jason felt the tide shift. The three men weren't predators anymore. They were prey caught under the spotlight of their own stupidity. Mike straightened, scanning the dock, his voice booming like thunder. "This is done. You got two choices. Walk away with whatever dignity you have left, or stay, and I'll strip you of that too." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Jason's chest rose and fell, his knuckles aching from gripping the broken rod. Around them, neighbors stared wide-eyed, half excited, half frozen, waiting for someone to make the next move. The HOA clowns stood there, trembling, humiliated, still trying to figure out whether to keep up the act or admit defeat. The dock swayed slightly with the weight of tension, every second stretching longer than the last. The dock was a live wire about to fry everyone standing on it. Jason's broken fishing rod hung at his side like a useless relic, his chest pounding hard enough to rattle his ribs. The three wannabe cops were standing there like circus animals that had just realized the cage door was open but had no clue what to do next. The red-faced leader clutched his wrist, pale and sweating, eyes darting between Mike and the crowd like he was calculating how fast humiliation traveled on Facebook feeds. His voice shook, but he tried to bark anyway. "This is assault." "You'll regret this." Mike tilted his head, grin wide and mean. "Assault? Dude, what the fuck? That was me teaching you basic motor skills. If you regret anything, regret not pulling out when your parents had the chance." The crowd howled. Laughter rolled through the neighborhood like a wave. Someone shouted, "Damn, he went there." And even Jason, still trembling, snorted through the knot in his throat. The bald guard stepped up, chest puffed like a pissed-off pigeon. "You're threatening officers of the community." "That's jail time," Jason muttered, loud enough for the first row of neighbors to hear. "Yeah, jail time in the county of make-believe." The laughter hit again, but under it was something darker, a hungry silence that swallowed the gaps. Everyone knew the fight wasn't just words anymore. The tension was thick, metallic in the air, like the taste of blood before a punch landed. Mike's eyes locked on the bald guard. His voice dropped low like a growl dragged through broken glass. "You touch me or my kid, and you'll be fishing your teeth out of the lake. That's not a threat. That's a weather forecast." The crowd gasped, phones snapping closer. Jason's pulse spiked, half terrified, half thrilled. He felt like he was standing in a movie, except the sweat down his spine was real. The stench of cheap cologne from the guards was real. The crunch of his fish still stuck in his ears was real. The bald one lunged. Not fast, not skilled, just pure dumb fury. His arm swung wide, and the air whooshed as he aimed for Mike's jaw. Mike moved like he'd been waiting. He sidestepped, grabbed the man's shirt collar, and yanked. The bald guard stumbled, tripped on the uneven dock plank, and went down hard. His shoulder cracked against the wood, and the whole dock shuddered. Gasps erupted. Phones caught it from 10 different angles. Jason's eyes went wide, adrenaline blasting through him. His voice broke the silence. Holy shit, Dad just folded him like a lawn chair. The neighbors lost it. Cheering, clapping, the kind of manic energy you'd hear at a high school fight where no one cared about consequences. The bald guard groaned, clutching his side, trying to get up. Mike leaned over him, voice loud and sharp. Get up again, and I'll teach you how gravity really works. The red-faced leader stepped forward, shaking, plastic cuffs dangling uselessly from his hand. This is not over! Mike barked a laugh. It is for you. Look at yourself. You're sweating like a rotisserie chicken. Your sidekick's laid out like trash day, and the quiet one over there looks like he's about to piss himself. Everyone turned to the third guy with the phone. His hands were trembling so badly the video was nothing but shaky chaos. For the first time, he lowered it, eyes wide, jaw tight. Jason smirked through the mess, voice sharp. Yeah, keep recording, dude. Maybe title it 3 Dumbasses Get Wrecked by One Dad. Bet it gets more views than your Tinder profile. The laughter was merciless. Phones panned to catch the silent guard's face burning red. The air on the dock was chaos. Clashing sounds of laughter, gasps, the lake slapping against the wood, the quiet moans of the bald guard trying not to vomit. Jason's skin buzzed with electricity. He was scared, sure, but he was also lit up by something primal, the sight of his dad turning humiliation into a weapon. Mike turned back to the crowd, spreading his arms like a showman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when you let power go to people with the IQ of a toaster oven. You get 3 clowns trying to run a circus they can't even spell. The crowd erupted again, cheering, clapping, whistling. The guards stood frozen, drenched in their own failure, while Jason's chest heaved, his broken rod still clenched like proof of the morning's madness. The dock felt like it was trembling under the weight of everything: anger, shame, humiliation, and something dangerous building in the air. The dock had turned into a gladiator arena with wood planks instead of sand. The bald guard was still sprawled on the boards, wheezing like a dying accordion, while the red-faced leader looked like a tomato about to pop. The quiet guy clutched his phone but kept lowering it, like even the lens was too ashamed to keep filming. Jason stood behind his dad, the broken rod in his hands trembling, but his eyes were lit up. He had never seen Mike like this, calm, lethal, and sarcastic enough to peel the skin off these clowns without even touching them. The red-faced man shouted, his voice cracking, "You're finished! You can't humiliate us like this in front of everyone!" Mike stepped forward, his grin spreading slow, dangerous. Finished? Buddy, what the fuck do you call this, a comedy show? Because if I'm the punchline, you're the sad clowns crying in the porta-potty after the circus shuts down. The crowd howled. Laughter echoed across the lake, bouncing off the water like mocking ghosts. Even Jason laughed, short and sharp, his nerves buzzing like live wires. The bald guard tried to get up, but his legs shook. He managed a pathetic growl. "We're in charge. We'll take this to the board." Mike raised his eyebrows. "The board? Oh no, please don't tell the Council of Karens that Daddy and his fishing rod hurt your feelings. What's next? You gonna ground me for mowing my own lawn?" The neighbors roared again. Phones captured every word, every smirk, every twitch of the guards' faces as their authority bled out onto the dock. Jason tightened his grip on the broken rod, whispering, "Dad just nuked them harder than my math teacher nukes my GPA." The quiet guard finally muttered, low and bitter, "This isn't over." His voice shook, but it was enough to silence the crowd for a second. Mike turned his gaze on him, sharp as a blade. "You're right, it's not over. It's over when you walk your sorry asses off this dock and think real hard about why 3 men thought stomping on a kid's fish made them look powerful." The dock groaned under the weight of silence. The guards shifted uneasily, faces pale, sweat dripping down their necks. The crowd leaned in, waiting for the next move, hungry for the chaos to either explode or collapse. Jason's chest rose and fell, his heart racing. For the first time, he wasn't scared. He was standing behind his father, who stood like a wall made of pure sarcasm and rage. And the 3 wannabe cops, they were crumbling, their fake authority shredded in front of everyone. The dock had chosen its winner, and it wasn't them. The dock smelled like sweat, lake water, and humiliation. The 3 fake cops stood there like broken action figures, cracked plastic, and no batteries left. Neighbors were still packed tight along the shore, recording every second like vultures with iPhones. The air buzzed with that weird mix of excitement and fear, the kind of vibe you got when someone threw a chair in a high school cafeteria and everyone screamed but nobody left. The red-faced leader tried to rally, his voice shaking but loud. "Everyone here is a witness. This man is violent, unstable, and—" Mike cut him off with a grin sharp enough to draw blood. "Violent, dude? What the fuck? I haven't even started. If I was violent, you'd be floating in the lake right now like driftwood with bad credit." The crowd burst out laughing. Someone shouted, "Tell him again!" And even Jason, still buzzing with adrenaline, cracked a smile. His broken rod felt lighter in his hands, less like a reminder of shame and more like a souvenir of survival. The bald guard staggered up, veins bulging in his forehead. "We'll sue you. We'll take everything you own." Mike stepped closer, his voice low but carrying. "Sue me? The only thing you should be suing is the factory that made your brain this defective. What lawyer is going to take your case? The three middle-aged men traumatized because a teenager caught a fish? Please." Jason coughed a laugh, muttering, "Yeah, jury would fry you faster than my Xbox overheating." The neighbors cackled, phones zooming in. The HOA trio looked smaller with every second, swallowed up by the spectacle they thought they controlled. The quiet guard finally snapped, jabbing a finger at Mike. "This crowd doesn't change anything. We are the authority here." Mike's laugh was so sharp it silenced the doc. He tilted his head, eyes burning. "Authority? You three just got clowned on by a kid and his dad while half the neighborhood cheered. The only authority you have left is over your own tears. And even that looks shaky." The crowd howled, whistles and claps echoing across the lake. Jason felt a surge of pride rip through his chest, pride so strong it made his earlier humiliation feel like a bad dream. The guard stood frozen, pale and dripping sweat, while Mike towered over them, the weight of his words turning the dock into a courtroom where humiliation was the only sentence. Jason knew right then, whatever happened next, these men would never live this down. The dock had gone dead quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was that dangerous silence right before thunder cracks. Neighbors held their phones up like they were filming the season finale of their favorite drama. Jason could hear his own heartbeat, loud and frantic, but mixed with it was something else, pride. His dad was still standing tall, one man against three clowns who had officially lost every shred of dignity. The red-faced leader tried one last time, pointing his trembling finger at Mike. "You'll regret this. You and your son. Both of you are finished." Mike chuckled, shaking his head like he'd just heard the worst dad joke in history. "Finished? Dude, what the fuck? The only thing finished here is your career as neighborhood tough guys. You came to flex, and now you're leaving like clowns who got roasted at an open mic." The crowd howled, some neighbors clapping so hard their palms stung. Jason felt the knot of shame in his chest finally snap. He lifted his broken fishing rod like a trophy and shouted, "Yeah, go cry to your HOA meeting, losers." Phones caught it from every angle. The bald guard turned purple, fists clenched, but he didn't dare move. The quiet one with the phone finally shoved it into his pocket, eyes down, beaten. Mike stepped closer, his voice sharp, each word hammering into their skulls. "You three wanted to shame my son. Instead, you shamed yourselves in front of the entire neighborhood. You stomped a fish, broke a rod, and got roasted so bad you'll smell like smoke for weeks. That's your legacy now." The silence that followed was brutal. Even the lake seemed to pause. No ripples, no ducks, just raw humiliation hanging in the air. Finally, the red-faced leader snapped. He grabbed the bald guard's arm, jerked his head at the quiet one, and muttered, "We're leaving." They shuffled off the dock, limping, broken, and drenched in failure. The crowd erupted, cheering, clapping, shouting insults after them. Someone yelled, "Hey, HOA, better enforce your dignity!" Another screamed, "Don't forget the fish funeral!" Jason laughed so hard his stomach hurt. He looked up at his dad, eyes wide. "Dad, you just destroyed them." Mike smirked, pulling his son close with one arm. "Destroyed? Nah, I just reminded them who the fuck they were messing with." Jason grinned through the chaos, clutching his broken rod, heart pounding with pride. For the first time that morning, he felt unbreakable. The dock belonged to them now.